Welcome back to Kubrick, LEGO fans! Today is finally the day. My long-awaited part of the Siege of Bricks Conquest collaboration is now completed and I am so excited to show it to you guys. After about 4 months, probably about 20,000 pieces and countless hours of planning and building, it's time to reveal my biggest medieval build so far. Of course, we have had some delays, but I made it just in time for the convention that is taking place next weekend, so I'm ready to display it alongside of the Black Falcon castle made by Edge of Bricks. Today I'll be covering each and every detail I've incorporated in this build, talk a little about the techniques, and of course the whole collab idea. But first I want to show you a cinematic that I've made for my part, so sit back and relax, and we're starting right now. So guys, what do you think? Me, I am so happy with the final result and I just can't wait to connect it to the castle and see the full collab together as one build next week. But first things first, if you are here for the first time, of course welcome, but you're probably wondering what is this collab I'm talking about. So go ahead and smack that subscribe button and let's go through the story. So the idea was that along with my friend from the channel Edge of Bricks, we've made the Siege of Bricks collab 2 years ago, in which he was attacking my castle with his trebuchet. Even though we had a similar style and a common theme, last time we were not able to display them properly anywhere and we had to settle for a YouTube only collab, which if you haven't seen I will link down below. But since we had so much fun making it, we decided to make a sequel to it, but this time with switch sides so that Edge could be the one building the castle, and I decided to make the outskirts showing a part of a village with an army charging towards the gate. And this time we couldn't let it pass and we planned everything to be able to display it properly on an exhibition which will be taking place next weekend on Targi Hobby in Poznań. But before we do that, let's first check out my part, since you could already see Edge of Bricks castle on his channel about 2 weeks ago. And man, the overall look is just so good. But maybe we'll start the tour with all of the minifigures showing the army that is charging towards the gate, and then we can focus on the rest of the details. I may not have too much of the Crow Knights, but I was able to man the battering ram I made to crush the gate, and have some more soldiers to actually be attacking the enemy. For the purpose of this video, I've added a couple of Black Falcons just to add some action to the scene, but for the actual collab there will be only crows here, since there will be enough of the falcons in the castle. The battering ram is of course my own design, for which I will make some kind of a tutorial someday, but if you want to learn more about it, make sure you check out episode 3 and 4 of the building series. And the ram is of course surrounded by soldiers, with some knights in the front and a couple of crossbowmen and a king commanding from the back. But the soldiers are of course not the only ones here, as we have a couple of peasants standing around terrified of what's happening. But now for the actual build. As the castle gate will be on the right, I had to make a road in the same style as Edge of Bricks did and just spread it over the whole MOC. At first I wanted to make the road going straight to the left, but I figure why not make my life harder and make it curving towards the front. And even though I had a very tough time making the wedge connections work, I'm glad I did that. Not only the curved road looks so much better than just a regular straight line, but also because of that I had more room for the house that is definitely the best element of the whole MOC. But more about the house later in the video. For now let's just focus on the road and all of its surroundings. So as for the road itself, it starts or actually finishes on the right side, where it will be connected to the castle with the same pattern as Edge did, using a mix of plates, tiles and bricks placed sideways. It goes all along these two base plates, curving slightly using 2x3 wedge plates, which was relatively an easy task to make on its own, but the problem came at the end because it was very hard to make the end even with the base plate. But eventually I made it in a satisfying way, and if you want to know how, just check out episode 5 for more details. But back to the right side. Here I had to make the terrain in olive green so it would be a seamless connection to Edge of Bricks part, using the same ground and foliage techniques as he did, but I didn't want the whole MOC in that color, so I decided to break it with the river and slowly change the color scheme to a more vibrant and fresher one. But of course I've placed a lot of small details, plants and even a squirrel sitting in the grass somewhere to make this small part as complete as I could, while still maintain the style of the castle surroundings. To make a transition to the river, I just use a simple rockwork technique, and then I made the water using a bunch of different shades of blue plates to simulate the depth of the water, and covered up with a layer of trans clear plates and another one with trans blue tiles. It's the first time I use this way of making the water, but I'm really happy of how it looks. Something about that smooth surface that is just right, you know? The riverbank is covered with some wedge plates just to make it more interesting, and in the middle I made a small rock. What I like here is the small transclear elements that are showing the water smashing on some uneven surfaces. It just brings a bit of realism to the river, contrasting with the smooth surface of a calmly flowing water tiles. But the best thing in this part of this build is of course the bridge. I wanted something small and simple, but at the same time made in an intricate way, if that makes sense. So the bridge deck is made only using 1x2 plates, which gave me the possibility to bend it a bit, giving that curved look like most of the medieval bridges were made. But that was the simplest part. It's the parapets on the sides and the curved arches that were a tricky part. Luckily, I came up with this awesome design, and it's honestly all I could ask for. The curve is made with some clip plates attached to a flex bar, and all is integrated very smoothly to the sides with a lot of different oriented bricks, plates and slopes, and it looks so good in my opinion. Moving on to the other side of the river, here I played around with the look of the riverside and made a muddy shoreline with some cane growing around, just to make a bit of a smoother transition between the right olive green side and the regular green that is on the left. I even made a small rock here to have the base plate connected here with a pin that is on the inside. For the edge of the ground here, I just stacked some wedge plates so that it resembles a small dune, and filled the gaps with some green grass stands. Maybe not the best solution here, but in the end it looks alright. And here is where the actual village begins. So starting from the front, here I made a sheep pen with a bunch of sheep running away from the road. The ground here is made with a lot of wedge plates, not only on the edge meeting the road, but also making the steepness of the terrain. I really like this technique, showing the uneven terrain very naturally, with an addition of some plates and tiles, a few grass stems here and there, and this decayed tree stump from the old western set, which fits here perfectly. All is surrounded by a very nice fence made from brown flex cables, which is a nice technique that I haven't seen many people use, and it's a shame because it looks so good in this type of builds. On the other side of the road, we continue with the roller atmosphere with a little bit of grass and this huge apple tree, which must be the best tree I've made so far. I've already talked about its details in episode 4, so if you're interested, check out the link in the card. But now all I can say is that I'm just loving how it looks by itself and how it adds value to the presentation of the center part of my MOC. Under the tree there are of course a couple of rotten apples, a goat gazing on the grass, and on the left a pretty looking pig pen, which is below the actual ground level and made with browns just to show that it's actually mud. The pigs seem pretty happy here, eating some apples that fell from the tree and some leftovers from the garden in their trough. All is nicely surrounded by a similar but yet so different fence that I did around the sheep pen. Yes, it uses the same flex cables, but I wanted it a bit lower so that it wouldn't cover the pigs that much, and that is why I use brown carrot tops instead of bars to connect them, and the cables themselves are wrapped around the dark brown droid arms. It may be laying here freely, but I could form it in whichever way I wanted so that the fan fits perfectly with the layers of dark tan dirt surrounding the pan. Moving on to the more human use places, we have a couple of crop beds near the pigs, with some small crops growing out of the ground, made with another simple yet very effective technique, using some rounded bricks and some headlights to stick the plants in. And of course, next to the crops is the main focus of the build, which is the house that came out enormous, but most importantly pampered with details in every inch. But I want to save the best for the end, so first let's check out the small details that are in front of it. So of course we have a small path going from the road to the doors, made in a similar style that the road itself and surrounded with some grass. In front of the house there is also a water well, made just perfectly in minifigure scale, but still using a lot of small elements that make up all of the details. And the rest of the terrain is just grass with some cows gazing and a small flower bed just to make the build more colorful, and what I like the most are a couple of sunflowers. I shouldn't talk about those too much though, because the technique I used here is a bit illegal, connecting the flower pieces together with a piece of a wire, but it was totally worth it in the end. Just don't call the Lego police on me, will you? And moving on, here is where it gets interesting. Yes, the house that I wanted to be the main focus of the whole build, so of course it had to be filled with as much details as possible, both on the outside as well as the interior, which we will talk about in just a second. First, we have to appreciate all of the details on the walls that used up so much small elements that I couldn't keep up with counting, even if I wanted to. You may recognize this style of building because I made it very similar to the Black Falcon barracks I did last year, but here it's on a much larger scale that I did back then and looks so much better. So the bottom is made of stone and the upper floor is made with a half-timbered wall, but I didn't want just a plain regular block, so I've added this part of the floor overhanging on two pillars, which was a great idea in my opinion. Not only the shape is now more interesting, but I could use this space below to store some farming equipment, fruits and veggies in some baskets, and even a butter churn for which the cat is lurking from behind. But back to the house. The half-timbered wall is made of course with a little offset and using a lot of 1x2 plates just to make these different colored layers of mold that will normally dye the wall from all of the moisture gathering in the corners, and all is crossed with wooden beams made from precisely cutting the reddish-brown flex bars. And that was the easy part. Most of the work I had with the roof. I knew I wanted to make it with cheese slopes I had from the False Emperor MOC, which I used about 1500 here, but the most challenging thing was to make that 90 degrees transition from the roof to the overlapping segment. And while it may not be perfect in terms of slopes, that is all I can do here, but I think with the roof made in black and the wedge plates under the gaps, it's looking great either way. I'm also happy with the overhanging brown rakes that are covering the sides of the slopes, giving the whole roof a lot more character. And of course we had to include a chimney going all the way through the roof, with my favorite smoke technique that is made with some stacked ice cream pieces. And finally, let's check out what's happening on the inside of the house, because you know me, I just couldn't sleep if I didn't include an interior in my MOC. So for that, I had to leave one wall open so that we could see what's on the inside, and I even made a cutout in the roof to see all of the interior details. The first thing I did here was of course the wooden floor made with reddish brown masonry bricks, which fits here perfectly. And to make things even more complicated, I settled for a fully tiled ceiling, for which I had to reverse the studs and make a support beam in the front so it would evenly hold the upper floor. So what we do have on the ground floor is a big common room with a dining table filled with food and drinks, a couple of chairs, a chest in the back next to a pretty smooth looking bench I made from 2 books, and of course a fireplace to keep the residents warm. Of course I've used some lights for the fireplace as well as some torches around the house, because why not? Not too many, but I had to include at least a few. And going to the top we have a regular staircase with some more food crates underneath, like some pumpkins, cucumbers, and even a pot of honey. On the top floor I decided to place a couple of beds, a bathtub or rather a big bowl for a quick wash before going to bed, a chair, and even a small bookcase in the corner. I know that it's not common for villagers to read in medieval times, but this particular house owner is a retired king's knight, which you can recognize from the crate with a black and blue coat, a sword and a shield. Hey, it's my story, so I can make up an ex-knight turned farmer who can read, right? And you're probably wondering what's behind that door in the overhanging part of the house. Well, story-wise, it's the master bedroom, but really, I've just hidden the battery pack there, which I can reach through a window when I want to pop the switch. And that is actually the last element of today's tour. Of course, the story doesn't end here, because this MOC will be connected to the castle and displayed together next weekend in Poznań, where I will take some shots and make a full collab video. But for that you'll have to wait a bit. Or don't, because if you have an opportunity to come, then make sure you visit Targi Hobby in Poznań from 29th to the 30th of October. And if you're there, make sure to stop by and say hi. I'm always open to talk LEGO with you guys, and in person it's even better. So yeah, that's all for today. I hope you like what I made in these last 4 months, and if you did, please smack that like button and tell me what's your opinion on the build in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video, or on the exhibition. And until then, make sure to keep it brickin'.